The end is nigh. Attila the Hun, the scourge of God, is fighting against a mass of Romans who are making their final stand in Gaul, modern-day France. This would be the last great pitched battle of the Roman era, or at least in the empire's western half. But this ultimate clash may be different from what you're picturing right now. Popular imagination of this period is that of the last Romans versus hordes of barbarians, of Christians versus pagans, of civilization versus barbarism and anarchy, and that these death throes of the Roman Empire eventually led to its utter collapse in 476, ushering in the Dark Ages of the medieval period. Well, let's address these notions by examining a primary text that mentions our aforementioned battle, namely the Battle of the Catalaunian Plains, or the Battle of Chalons. Our historian is Jordanes, a 6th century secretary who lived in the Eastern Roman Empire. And our text comes from his famous yet controversial work, the Gattaca, or the History of the Goths. The Goths were a Germanic-speaking migratory group who were either allies or enemies of Rome, depending on the circumstances. They were notable for inflicting one of the worst defeats on the Roman army at Adrianople in the year 378, and for actually sacking Rome itself in 410. However, by 451, the year in which our battle takes place, they now join forces with the Western Roman Empire against a mutual foe, the dreaded Huns. And the Romans were not just joined by the Goths, but by hosts of other tribes and ethnicities, or races as Jordanes calls them. This battle will serve as a microcosm of Roman-barbarian relations during the late antique period. This battle was not the first instance of the Roman military being supplemented by foreign auxiliaries. Since the time of the early Republic, Rome had relied on non-Roman support troops to not only increase recruitment numbers, but to also add more flexibility and variety to their military forces at a cost-efficient rate. This process intensified and took on different shapes during the late Roman era, starting around the 4th century. These foreign auxiliaries during this time were called federati. Federati, meaning allies, were tribes without Roman citizenship bound by a treaty or a foedus to Rome, in which Rome would bestow gifts in the form of cash or land in exchange for military service. Several medieval states had their inception as a consequence of this process, such as the Kingdom of the Franks, Burgundians, and Goths. The late Roman military hierarchy was likewise a blend of various traditionally non-Roman peoples. For instance, several barbarian and half-barbarian officers served as the Magister Militum, the highest military appointment. Important figures such as Alaric, Stilicho, Theodoric had these titles granted to them by Roman emperors. Even Aetius, the Roman commander leading the charge against Attila, might have been half-barbarian himself. Aetius spent most of his youth as a hostage of the Huns. During his generalship in Rome, he used his connections with the Huns as a weapon against his political rivals and military foes. However, when Attila became the new king of the Hunnic Empire, his relentless slaughter and sacking of Roman lands pushed Aetius to search for new allies, even amongst his previous enemies. He formed a coalition of sorts, mustering a Roman army consisting almost entirely of barbarian federati and allies. Likewise, Attila gathered his army of Huns, supplemented by various subjugated Germanic tribes. If you like what you're seeing right now, leave a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to show your support. Here's what Jordanes says. On the side of the Romans stood the patrician Aetius, on whom at that time the whole empire of the West depended, a man of such wisdom that he had assembled warriors from everywhere to meet them on equal terms. Now these were his auxiliaries: Franks, Sarmatians, Armoricians, Latikians, Burgundians, Saxons, Barbarians, Olibriones, and some other Celtic or German tribes. He was also joined by Alans under their king Sangiban and Visigoths under Theodoric I, with both of their armies making up crucial components of the combined coalition force. Now, back to Jordanes. On the other side, however, the battle line of the Huns was so arranged that Attila and his bravest followers were stationed in the center. The innumerable peoples of diverse tribes, which he had subjected to his sway, formed the wings. Amid them was conspicuous the army of the Ostrogoths, under the leadership of the brothers Valamir, Theudemir, and Vidimir. The renowned king of the Gepide, Ardaric, was there also with a countless host. And because of his great loyalty to Attila, he shared his plans. And so they met at the Catalaunian Plains. The battle raged with savage brutality. Finally, in the end, it was a Pyrrhic victory for Aetius' faction, suffering heavy losses but stopping Attila's rampage from Gaul. However, the next year, Attila would be seen again plundering Italy until he was turned away for good by Pope Leo I. But going back to our source, Jordanes' description paints an interesting picture. The last great battle before the political collapse of Western Rome was fought almost entirely by non-Romans. And indeed, Romanized barbarian chieftains and federati would continue to dominate the political and military landscapes in the latter days of the Western Roman Empire, functioning as the de facto power in the West, and eventually displacing the emperors themselves, who were at this point just figureheads. This battle conjures many questions. What is a Roman, and how fluid was the boundary between Roman and non-Roman identities during this period? Were federati boons or burdens on the empire? Did the Romans properly integrate non-Romans into their political, military, and social structures? And how did these treaties between Romans and barbarians create the world of the Middle Ages? If you made it this far and want to explore more of the late Roman world, click this video to learn about the founder of Christian monasticism, the father of monks himself, St. Anthony of Egypt. See you next time.